Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Let Love Flow. This is a workshop to help you to let love flow into your life. So thank you for joining me. As I just mentioned, I'll talk you through my Let Love Flow framework. There'll be a chance for you to participate in the chat. If you are watching on record, please also participate. You can take notes when I pause for the questions. I'll then tell you a little bit about my programs that I've got coming up, and then we'll have a Q&A, which you can ask questions in the chat. And at the end of the workshop, once I switch the recording off, those of you who are here live are invited to come on with your videos and to say hello. So thank you for joining me, and I know many of you know me, but for those of you who don't, or who might watch on record and don't know me, I'm Katherine. I am a love, dating and relationships coach, a midlife mentor, so I help women to change their lives, and I'm the author of this book, How to Fall in Love, a 10-Step Journey to the Heart, and I host the Love Retreat, which is a face-to-face retreat, which will happen in Turkey in October and hopefully in Dorset as well in the winter, late autumn, winter. And I also host How to Fall in Love courses, How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations, and Date with Courage, Clarity and Confidence. That's my official bio, but I also want to tell you about my journey, briefly, my journey over the last 10 years, because for me, it's an example of how I let love flow into my life and into all areas of my life. So prior to turning 40, so I've just turned 50, as some of you know, but prior to turning 40, in my late 30s, I had a very different life and a very different career, working as a political journalist in the Houses of Parliament, traveling to tsunamis and earthquakes and terrorist attacks and traveling with the Prime Minister. It was full on, and I gave my all to that job. I was exhausted, I burnt out, I broke down. So I ended up late 30s, single, in London, in a small flat, wondering how on earth did I end up here? You know, my career, that career had pretty much ended. I hadn't had a healthy relationship, partly because I was so busy with my job and partly for other reasons, which we'll go into on this workshop. I'd also been engaging in a lot of self-harm in my job, sort of work addiction, working too hard, binge eating prior to that in my late teens, 20s, drinking too much alcohol, and getting into painful, dysfunctional, unhealthy relationships. So if you can picture me back then, I just say that because, as you can hear, I led a different life. I wasn't a different person. I led a different life, a rather unhealthy life. And in the last 10 years, I have completely transformed my career, which began with a really authentic blog that I started writing when I turned 40, from 40 with Love. And through that blog, I found myself, I found my passion, which is writing and coaching and speaking about the things that truly matter to me and matter to you too. You know, self-love, healthy relationships with ourselves and with others, being in a healthy relationship, avoiding self-harming behaviors and all those things. So that was my new direction. And over that journey in my early 40s, I began a relationship. I committed to a relationship. And then I decided to move to Dorset, so out of London, to the beach, where I've always wanted to live, where I swim in the sea. I swam this morning in the sea. And I committed to my relationship. I got married 2 years ago at 48. I wrote my book, which was a real dream, and I'm writing a novel. And then I created these coaching courses and a coaching business built on supporting people to find their truth, understand their patterns, heal their wounds, and change their relationships in order to have a healthy and loving relationship. So that's where I am today, and it's a very different place. And I know what the struggle is like. I have been in my late 30s, early 40s, single, dating online, getting nowhere, wondering where all the good people had gone, where are all the good guys, thinking that they'd all been taken, that there wasn't someone for me, really struggling to get the energy to date online. And then once I found someone to date, sort of really getting in a mess. So pushing them away, pulling them back, pushing them away, looking over their shoulder to see who else was available, just push, pull. And so I know what the struggle is like. I know what the struggle is like. The struggle is real, but it doesn't have to be a struggle. So when I let go of control and really spent time and put some effort and investment into understanding myself and my patterns, then everything changed and I allowed love to flow. And it's not just, me, it's not just my story, some of my clients, and I'll tell you a bit about this a little bit later, but I just wanted to mention this one client, Kate. So she said, with my guidance, she finally dared to fully embrace and love herself and to believe that she was worthy of being loved. Not long after that, I entered into a new relationship. Suddenly, love came naturally to me. So that's what we want. We want love to come naturally to us without the struggle, without the stress, without the pushing and pulling, without the overwhelm, without the anxiety. So I hope that's something that you would like. So we're going to talk about that on this workshop. And something I said the other day I did a workshop like this a few days ago. So I am not a miracle worker in your life. So I can't work miracles in your life, but you can. You can. I have worked miracles in mine. I absolutely see where I am today, marriage, book published, sea swimming, beach living. I see that as a miracle. And I work those miracles in my life. You can do the same in your life. I didn't do them on my own, and I would suggest that you don't try that on your own either. I mean, we can. I tried for a while on my own, but I did that with a lot of support. So it's wonderful that you're here, because I believe that we can work miracles in our lives if we try and work them together. So I'm going to talk us through our my love flows framework, and in very simple terms, I'll tell you what it is. So the first part of it is to love yourself. So I know that this sounds like something you've heard before. You've heard it from me, you've heard it from others. You know this, but I'd like you to think a little bit more about this today, because we can always go further on this. And this is the key that will unlock your relationships. So before we delve into it, I'd like you to join me in a really brief centering meditation and also exploration. So an exploration of what's going on inside. So if you can join me to close your eyes, if it's safe to do so, ideally you'd be sitting down, and I'd like you to close your eyes. And I'd like you to just notice where you are. Feel your body. Feel your legs or your back against where you're sitting. Perhaps your feet on the floor. And I'd like you to connect with your breath. So your breath is your channel to your insides, to your heart, to your intuition. And notice where you can feel that the most. It's helpful to focus on an area of the body. So it might be the way your breath comes in through your nose and out through your mouth. You might feel your breath where your chest is, where your tummy is. And what I do when I'm doing this work is I hold myself. So I have my hands placed across my chest and my heart space. I've got both hands there. And I'd like to invite you to do the same. And then you can feel your breath. And you can connect with your heart, with your hand over your heart. And hopefully you're able to stay with me. I know our minds are busy things, busy machines. They dart around all over the place. But I hope you're able to access a couple of moments of peace. Because this is how we connect to our feelings. Our feelings show us what's really going on inside. And they highlight the areas we need to attend to. And they show us where we need to love ourselves more. I'm going to ask a question now. So in this position, in this moment of peace with this hand, your hand over your heart, I'd like you just to think about this area of love, romance, dating, relationships. And I'd like you to ask yourself how you feel about it. What feelings come up when you think about love, dating, romantic relationships, or perhaps relationships in general? So see if you can connect to a feeling or some feelings. You might feel hopeful, excited. You might feel exhausted, overwhelmed, tired, hopeless, exasperated. You might feel pain, fear. If you can't access any feelings, just see if you can drop a layer deeper. Because at the surface, we often have, the immediate feelings like anxiety or stress. But if you can go deeper, perhaps you access something deeper. So think about going a layer deeper. For me, I find a mix of sadness and excitement. Not about my relationship or love, but about my life, because I have sadness about my mum who died recently, and I have excitement because I love doing this work and I can see how it could grow. So just see what comes up for you. So I'd like you to return to your breath now. And I'm going to invite you to, in a few breaths, take a few deep breaths, and then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I'd like to invite you to comment in the chat any feelings that came up. So what will happen if you do comment is I will mention the comments, but I won't say your name. And also the chat isn't recorded. So it doesn't form part of this video. So if anyone would like to just share how they feel, about the area of love, dating, and relationships. And I just recall from our Tuesday's call, there was a whole mix of feelings, some hope, and then a sense of feeling tired, overwhelmed, exhausted. You know, some of you, I know your stories, and I know that you have been looking for a relationship, or looking for love, or trying to love yourself on a deeper level for a long time. And I congratulate you for all the work you've done on yourself and for being here. And it's okay still to have feelings that aren't full of joy and excitement. It's okay still to have sadness and a feeling of overwhelm. So if anyone would like to share, please do that. It's really, you know, from our last workshop, it's really helpful if people participate, because then everyone knows that they're not alone. One of the things that comes up for a lot of us is this sense that it's just me, it's only me who's struggling. It's only me who's struggling with this area of my life, but it's not just you. And, you know, that's why I bring together women on these workshops and also on my groups, on my group courses, because it's important to work together so that we don't feel alone, so that we relate to each other, so that we can identify. So fun and exhausted, somebody shares. That's an interesting mix. So there's some excitement, some fun, and some exhaustion, overwhelmed. Yeah, especially in these lockdown times. If you're in the UK or somewhere where we are locked down, you know, so much of our life has gone online, including dating. And I know that online dating, particularly, especially for women in my audience who often are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, you know, often the online dating sphere is difficult. So overwhelm is a common feeling. So just as anyone else is sharing there, I'd like to talk about the, okay, just there's a few more feelings. Definitely not over the hill at 60. I've had women of 70 plus on my retreats, so, and on my courses. So a mental picture of a fiery line like a snail shell with a spark above it. I think it's about what that could mean to you. What could that mean to you? Yeah, that's interesting. Have a think about what that could mean to you. And if it came up, I believe it is relevant. So I'm just going to, feel free to add any more feelings there, but I'm just going to talk about the self-harm to self-love continuum. So there's a spectrum. So as I shared earlier, I was very much on the self-harm end of the spectrum in quite an extreme way for many years. Binge eating, starving, controlling my food intake, rushing, running, compulsively exercising, working all hours, absolutely prioritizing my career over my work, over my home life, romantic life, self-care and well-being. So it was quite extreme. And at this other end of the spectrum, there is self-love. And I know many of us work on this all the time. And, you know, it's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it perfect. It is about moving towards that. But what interests me in terms of those of us who are struggling to have a relationship is this gray area in the middle. So the subtle self-harm or lack of self-love that we offer ourselves. So for example, when we say yes, when we mean no, then that's a form, for me, that's a form of self-harm. It's denying ourselves. So we could be saying yes to others and we say no to ourselves, which means we don't have time or space for ourselves and we really struggle. We could be people pleasing. We could be allowing ourselves to be pushed around, to be pushed from pillar to post. This could be in our family lives, it could be in our work lives, it could be with friends. And why is this relevant? Because, on my journey, it was only by growing into my true self and becoming bigger and taller in terms of my space in the world and my power and my voice. It was only by having a really strong core and a strong, talk about the inner oak tree. It was only by really growing into myself that I was then able to find love and a happy relationship. So if you've read my book or taken a course, you'll know that I work a lot around the inner oak tree, the self-esteem. So important. And I know you know this. I know you've heard it before, and I know you've been working on this. But our self-esteem, I work with, women who've done loads of work on themselves, and it often comes down to self-esteem and confidence. Do we believe in ourselves? Do we believe that we are lovable? Do we believe that we deserve to take up our space in the world? Does it feel safe to speak our truth, to be ourselves? Is it okay to be ourselves? Will we be accepted? Will we be loved? Those questions are so important because, for me, it's a subtle but dangerous form of self-harm if we are modifying ourselves for other people, if we are not standing up for ourselves, not being true to ourselves. So our boundaries, ignoring our boundaries or not setting healthy and loving boundaries, this is, for me, is another form of self-harm or lack of self-love. So squishy boundaries, that they're soft, they're porous. We might say, just so I'm sure you know what I mean by boundaries, but imagine, I talk about the film Dirty Dancing, which some of you will have seen, when Patrick Swayze says, "This is my dance space, this is your dance space. You don't come into my dance space." So you get to say how far people come in, you get to say how much of yourself you give to others, especially relevant when we're dating. One of the problems that some women have in my groups is that, for example, conversations online get sexual really quickly and they don't want them to get sexual really quickly. But often it's because we have squishy boundaries. We are teaching people how to treat us. And what we're teaching them is that it's okay to say this stuff to us, that we don't mind. So it's about squishy boundaries, and what we want are healthy boundaries. So we want to be able to own our space, decide who gets to come in it or not, decide who speaks to us in a certain way or not. We get to control the timing of our relationships and the pace in which we move. We're not pushed sideways by somebody else's needs and wants. And, often many of us struggle with self-love because sadly, we weren't given a good model. So maybe our parents didn't love themselves, didn't demonstrate self-love. And importantly, maybe they didn't manage to love us consistently. So perhaps sometimes they loved us, sometimes they neglected us. And that inconsistency, we then pick up on that and we follow that in the way we treat ourselves. And I do this, sometimes I love myself, sometimes I stand up for myself, sometimes I use my voice, sometimes I express my needs and wants, and then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I put others' needs first, sometimes I don't stand up for myself or I don't use my voice. So I'd like you to think about this idea of squishy boundaries. And if anyone wants to share, where are you on the self-love, self-harm continuum, on the spectrum? Where do you think you are? So I invite you to write in the chat. A simple example would be if you are employed and working at home or working in an office. Does your job hurt you? I.e., do you not have time to eat your lunch? Do you eat your lunch at your desk? Do you work so many hours that you don't have time in the evening to have a social life or to have fun? Does your job hurt you because it sort of steals your soul? It takes away it's not matched to your authentic self. So have a think about that. Let me have a look. So self-esteem is vanishingly low. So I hear that, and I'm sorry to hear that, and you're not alone. And I think that, that is where the answer is. And, a lot of the work I do in my coaching and on my courses is about understanding why our self-esteem is so low. So often it could be an issue that's to do with today. We might not like how we look. We might not be treating ourselves well. And, when I'm not treating myself well, when I'm not eating well or exercising or getting good sleep, my self-esteem gets low. But it also could be about our past. So the deep wounds. And if you've worked with me, you know that we go deep because that's where the transformation happens. It's about the deep wounds. So where we abandoned, where we rejected, did our needs not get met? Did people say things about us that were unkind? Did we not have a secure base? Were we not held and supported as we needed to be? So someone says that they move about on the spectrum. Yeah. And that's true. And that's human. And what often happens when I do my relationship coaching or run my courses, things go wrong when we fall down on the spectrum and end up closer to the self-harm. So for example, a simple example is we're invited out on a date or to meet someone or even to meet friends, and we're feeling exhausted and not very good about ourselves, and we haven't been taking care of ourselves. And then we might go along. But then when we're on that date or on that meeting, we might feel rejected, we might get rejected. And that's because we started out not in a good place. And then there's a follow-on consequence. So that's why, my book and my courses, they all start with healthy self-esteem, because without that, it's really difficult to love ourselves and to believe that anyone else could love us. So if we can't love ourselves, it's really difficult to believe that we are lovable. So love yourself is the first part of the framework, and it's a big topic. And if you'd like more on that and you haven't read my book, take a look at my courses. I'll mention them in a little while. But ask yourself every day, where am I on this spectrum in relation to how I treat myself, whether I prioritize my health and well-being, how I treat myself at work. Am I overworked? Am I exhausted? Is my soul dead at work? I know all about that in my previous job. So where are you on that continuum? Think about that every day, and what little steps can you take? And to the person who mentioned that self-esteem is vanishingly low, and to the rest of you, what small steps can you take today? What one step can you take today to increase your self-esteem? So it could be reaching out to someone and talking about it. It could be making sure you take an hour for your lunch if you haven't had lunch already. It could be managing your social media behaviors if you're spending a lot of time online. It could be giving yourself a hug. So, I do a lot of work around the inner child. And often it's our inner child who's hurting and who doesn't feel good enough. And that will come from our past and our childhood. So you might want to think about some inner child work. Regular meditation and self-compassion, definitely helping. That's excellent. So I'm going to move on to the second part of the framework, which is to love your life. So this sounds simple as well, and you know it, but I think it's really important and often overlooked. So are you leading your authentic life? How is your soul? Is your soul feeling joyful? If you work, are you in the right job? So this is interesting to me because when I worked in Parliament, in politics, it was a very interesting, fascinating environment working in Parliament, and all the foreign trips and the adrenaline and all that. But ultimately, when I got to my late 30s, it was the wrong job for me. It wasn't feeding my soul. It wasn't feeding my authentic self. It was a total adrenaline addiction job. And therefore, I was dating in the wrong circles. I was dating, where I was looking for a partner was around Parliament or photographers or journalists and other people who had similar sort of high-flying, stressful jobs. So lawyers, doctors, and all those people. And it turned out that deep down, I didn't want to be a high-flying, stressed out person anymore. I wanted to live by the sea and have a life filled with well-being, and I wanted to do more holistic work. So I was dating in the wrong pool. I was dating in the wrong circles. The other reason I was dating in the wrong circles is that I didn't have any time to date in any circles. So one of the reasons I was overwhelmed with online dating is I didn't have any time or space for it. I didn't want to do it after work. I didn't particularly want to do it on my weekends. And that's because my job was draining me. So I know I do work with many women and men who have important jobs that they do really like, but it's important, coming back to boundaries, to think about, are you holding yourself in mind in your work life, and what impact is that having on your romantic life, on your ability to create space and time to find love. And when it comes to living your authentic life, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need to be living your authentic life in order to find love, but it's firstly important to have an intention as to what would it look like. This is why we do vision boards. What would my authentic, joyful life look like? And then what one step can I take toward living that joyful, authentic life? So one of my clients who was on the workshop the other day mentioned, she'd made a courageous step by asking her company to invest in her as she explores doing some training. And that's a step in the right direction towards your authentic life. So I'd like to ask that question too, and I'd like you to put any answers in the chat. Are you living your authentic life? Is your soul alive, or is it dead? Is it tired? Are you exhausted by the life that you're living? Are you dating in the right pool? So whatever comes up for you, I'd like you to put that into the chat. And again, it's a spectrum. So authentic life over here, and not authentic life here, and you might be somewhere in the middle, but there might be some steps that you can take in order to move towards a more joyful life. So people ask me, where did I meet my now husband? Well, we met when I started taking steps towards my authentic, joyful life. So I had left my job, my political journalism job. I had started my blog, which was just miraculous. It was like bringing me back home to myself. I had started writing about self-esteem and confidence and eating disorders and so many, and relationships in the media, in magazines. And importantly, I had reconnected with my love of outdoor stuff. So camping, cycling, swimming, hiking, I'd started doing that stuff. And it was through connecting with that side of me that I'd sort of forgotten a little bit, that I met friends who then introduced me to my now husband on a weekend away in Cornwall. And we bonded, over cycling and being outdoors. So where are you in terms of your authentic life? Are you leading your authentic life? And if anyone would like to share about that. Somebody says that they were looking, do I understand that correctly? Looking for public school boys? Yes, so I work with clients who have been to boarding school, and it does lead to issues. It leads to issues around rejection, abandonment in a child. So it might be about broadening those horizons, broadening the search. That doesn't mean to say that people who've been to boarding school wouldn't make a good match if they understand the issues that have come up for them. So yeah, if anyone else has any thoughts on whether they're living their authentic life, whether your soul is awake or asleep. Because what happens when I'm just looking at my face in this video, I went for a swim in the sea this morning, and that makes a difference to how I look. It makes my eyes brighter, it makes my face shine. I do have good lighting, but you know, it makes a difference to how I look on the outside and how I feel on the inside. So are your eyes shining? Is your face glowing? And if not, what are the things that make your eyes shine and your face glow? And can you do some of those things? Because I will guarantee you that when your eyes shine and your face glows, you will attract people. Now, I know that doesn't come across online, but it does actually in your energy, in what you write about yourself, in your willingness to participate. So have a think about whether your eyes are shining and your face is glowing and your heart is singing. Is your heart singing? What makes your heart sing? So please continue to comment if you'd like to. I'm going to move on and I'll look at the comments in a moment to the third part of this framework. So we love ourselves, we love our lives, and we bring joy into our lives. And joy is often something that comes up with my coaching clients. You know, is there joy in your life? And often there isn't, because it's work and responsibility and struggle. And then the final aspect is find love and let love flow. Because if we love ourselves and we are living our authentic, joyful lives, then love will flow. But what we might need to do, so this is about giving up the struggle. But in order to give up the struggle, we might need some courage to make some difficult choices or to take some steps. So you might need courage to change the way you're working, change the way you're living, change how you spend your time. And especially in this area of finding love, you might need some courage to understand the obstacles that are blocking you and to overcome those obstacles. So you might need to dig deeper and you might need to get out of your own way. That's exactly what I had to do. So, you know, I often say my specialist subject is commitment phobia. I didn't realize that I was afraid of commitment, afraid of intimacy, afraid of relationship, afraid of love. I didn't realize that because on the outside, it looked very different. I was dating, I had relationships, I was attracted to men, I went out with men. So how could I possibly have commitment issues if I was always looking and getting into relationships and having boyfriends? Well, it's because I kept choosing people who weren't available or who weren't willing to be with me, or who were always going to hurt me, or who lived in a different continent, or who were addicted to their work or addicted to alcohol or just weren't there for me. So no matter, you know, I was chasing and being in a relationship all the time, along with some periods of singleness, but a lot of the time I was dating or looking and being in a relationship. But ultimately, the people I was dating meant that I was afraid of commitment because they couldn't commit to me. And therefore, I didn't need to commit if I dated these guys who were too busy or living abroad or not available or too, you know, addicted to alcohol or any of those things. So that showed me that I was afraid of commitment. And when I understood that I was afraid of commitment, I could start to change that. So I just like to do a little bit of an exercise on fear. do you have any fears when it comes to relationships? And I'd like you to share them in the chat. Do you have any fears when it comes to relationships? Now, on the last workshop, there were a few more people, and we had a barrage of fears, and that often happens in on my workshops and on my other groups, because we have so many fears, and our fears relate to our patterns. So the way our fears are, our fears connect with our patterns. So if I'm afraid of commitment, that leads me into a pattern of always dating someone who isn't available for commitment. So there's a fear that I'd move too fast, absolutely, and that comes down to many things: self-esteem, believing that we are enough, believing that it's okay to go at our own pace, having healthy boundaries. And there's a whole chapter on boundaries in my book and on my courses. So having healthy boundaries is really important. And why do we move too fast? We often move too fast if we're craving love, affection, if we're craving, if we're craving relationship, we often move too fast. So I talk a lot about the craving in the work that I do. So I had a deep craving. I had a hole inside, which I filled with food, which I filled with alcohol, which I filled with sex, which I filled with accolades and achievements. And it was only as I filled myself up from the inside out with love and self-care and nourishment and friends and fun and joy and authentic life and nature and all those things, that I wasn't dating with a craving anymore. So ask yourself if you're dating with a craving. Fear of rejection is a big one. So thank you for sharing that. So that came up on the workshop a few days ago. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of, fear of rejection. So I often ask, have we experienced rejection before? And in many cases we have, especially when we were young, sadly. So, the moment my dad sat me on his knee and said he was moving out, I was little, I was a child. When we're children, we think the world revolves around us, that everything is our doing, and therefore I felt like it was my fault. I didn't feel pretty enough, good enough, lovable enough. It broke my heart. I felt rejected and abandoned. Also, if our mother isn't available to us because of our own issues, then we will feel rejected and abandoned. Perhaps things happened at school, or perhaps in a relationship later in life. But the fear comes from, the fear in my case always came from stuff that went before. It came from my past experiences that then get lodged in my subconscious and then trigger me in relationships in the present. So you might have heard me talk and write about if it's hysterical, it's historical. So when we have a fear that's exaggerated or much bigger than the circumstance, it's because it's historical. It's linked to our past. So in terms of rejection, when we go dating or looking for a relationship, it's quite normal to be rejected. If you think about the odds of two people meeting online or in a coffee shop, the odds of that working out the first time, the second time, the third time, the odds of that are pretty low. We have to keep going. So the chances of us being rejected are real. So if we go into a dating process fearing rejection and sort of crumble at the first sign of it, then we're not going to get very far, because that fear of rejection is linked to our past. So we need to deal with the past stuff. We need to heal the past stuff. And that's what I do in my work with women and men. We heal the past, the past stuff, so that we can go dating and get rejected and think, that hurt a bit, because we're being realistic. We're not robots, we're humans. That hurt a bit. That was sad. But it doesn't floor us, and it doesn't stop us from going dating next time. So yeah, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. So just noticing what people are saying in the chat. Yeah, in the old days with the much smaller pool, it was less complicated. I know what you're saying, and I really hear you. But I believe that if we work this framework, love yourself, love your life, and work on the issues that block you from finding love, I think it can be simple too. I don't think it has to be complicated. You know, if I look at my relationship, you know, when I look at it today, I can't imagine anything else. Obviously, we're meant to be together. Obviously, this is right. But I complicated it for so many years with all my judgments, with all my fears, with all my inner obstacles, with all my childhood stuff. I complicated it. So I know it's different now. And I know that the online dating sphere is difficult and not always fun. But I believe that we can find joy in it. And if we can trust ourselves and trust our intuition and set our boundaries, then I think we can find joy in it. And it doesn't have to be complicated. But perhaps have some compassion for yourself and for ourselves because of these feelings around this. You know, if it's been hard, have compassion for yourself. Allow yourself to feel that and validate that. Because that will allow us to move on and move beyond it. So there's another fear. If I commit, I might get fed up with the person, or we'd get fed up with each other. So that's real, and I hear you, and I had that too. You know, I really thought, for me, I thought commitment meant a trap, that I would be trapped. And I did think, how on earth can I spend the rest of my life with this one person? But I believe if it's the right person, then it just becomes joyful. But it's interesting because often these messages, and I know you've been through one of my courses, often the messages we have around commitment come from what we've seen in our lives. So perhaps what we saw from our parents or other people around us. Commitment, when I looked at marriage between my parents, well, it broke down very quickly. It wasn't much fun. My mum felt trapped. She felt like her life had been sabotaged. And it broke down very quickly. So that was my model. Why on earth would I want to enter into that relationship, that sort of commitment or marriage? And that's what kept me single for many, many years, or out of a committed relationship. But when it came to saying yes when I was getting married, I couldn't believe it, but I had no fears. That fear of being trapped or suffocated, it had gone. It did come up when I was proposed to, and I thought, oh my goodness, can I commit? But that was me still going through my process, The other thing, let me just take a sip of water. The other thing that comes up a lot is fear of rejecting. So sometimes we don't enter into relationships, or we don't date because we don't want to reject others. We don't want to let them down or hurt them. What if after 2 weeks or 3 months or 6 months, I decide I don't want to be with this person? So if we have a tendency to people please and avoid conflict and confrontation, we might end up in a relationship that we don't know how to get out of. But if we have healthy self-esteem, and if we understand that the dating process is about gathering information about each other, so somebody you've never met, gathering information about that person. And then you are free, you're a grown-up, they're a grown-up, you are free to move on if it's not right. So have a think about if there's any more fears. And what I'm going to do now, 2 things I'd like you to do. I'd like you to think about if you have any more fears, and I'd also like you to pop any questions in the chat, because in a moment we're going to move to the Q&A. But what I would like to do is I'd just like to share some examples of people who thought it was a struggle, but for whom it wasn't a struggle once they understood and worked through this framework. So you should be able to see my screen, and I'm just going to share. Oops, sorry. I'm just going to close the chat and put that there. So, so Kate, I worked with Kate, and with Katherine's guidance, I finally dared to embrace and love myself fully, and to believe that I am worthy of being loved. Not long after that, I entered into a new relationship. Suddenly, love came naturally to me. So I mentioned that quote earlier because I really like it. It shows suddenly love came naturally to me. So the struggle went, but it went once she loved herself and fully embraced herself and believed that she was worthy of being in love. And I love this from Fiona. Fiona did my retreat, followed by my foundations course, followed by my dating course. So with some fear and trepidation, I began dating in the summer, but knowing that I had the support of Katherine and the course participants made a huge difference to me. I dated with far greater awareness, and I'm now in the early months of a relationship. So this is how she describes being on the course. It was like running a race, having had a coach, that's me, show me how to run effectively, encouraging me to put in the training. So that's what she was doing. And with a bunch of people cheering me on from the sidelines. And that's what happens on my retreats and my courses and in my groups. You've got people cheering you on from the sidelines, picking me up when I tripped. And this is from Becky. Sorry, 1 second. Who is now married and who took my foundations course and came on my retreat to Turkey. I finally allowed myself to open up and trust myself and my now boyfriend, who feels just right. I'm now starting to imagine a future for myself with a truly amazing, fun and secure person, which I had never thought possible or experienced. So she would recommend my courses as a place to join with others on a journey of discovery, connection and courage. So this is why I say that it's not ideal to try and do this on our own, from my own experience. So as I on my journey to love, I had the support of a therapist, a coach, and fellow like-minded women who helped me along the way, and it was so important. So I just want to mention a few programs that I've got on offer and a gift for any of you who might be interested. If you've already done my courses, thank you. If you enjoyed them, perhaps you could say in the chat that you found them helpful. So my Laying the Foundations program, How to Fall in Love Laying the Foundations, it begins in April. In a couple of weeks. So it's a 3-month transformational program. We have 7 group coaching calls. And if you stay on at the end of this recording, we'll bring everyone on video and we can have an experience of one of those calls on Zoom. So a maximum of 8 people. So that means on the calls, there's lots of space for individual guidance. So you bring a problem, I help you to work through it, and everyone else shares their experience too. There's a Facebook group that's a really supportive space, and you have lifetime access to the content and lifetime membership to my collective, which is an alumni community of everyone who's been on a course or a retreat or done coaching with me. And there's an optional one-to-one session. So I have a gift for coming on this workshop of £100 off. So that takes the course to £450. And the code is Let Love Flow. And I'll put this in the chat in a moment. The code is valid until Sunday. And then I have a level 2 course. So this is for you if you have done your inner work. So you've either done the foundations course with me, or been on a retreat with me, or done coaching with me, or you have worked with another coach or counselor or therapist. You've done some inner work. Again, it's a 3-month transformational program, 7 group coaching calls, up to 10 women, generally a much smaller group, sort of 6, but up to 10 maximum. So that means, again, the space for individual guidance. And you have lifetime access to the content and lifetime membership of the collective. And this starts this coming Monday. So this course is already discounted to $450 because it's a 12-week course, and it was originally a 5-week, then an 8-week, then a 10-week. So I haven't increased the price to reflect the increase in value. So if you'd like to join that, I'll show you how in a moment. If you'd just like to take the courses at your own pace, you can work them in 5 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks or as long as you want. I have an offer of £50 off those courses with the code LetLoveFlow. I do recommend the groups, but if you want to work at your own pace, some people have really benefited from that too. So a reminder that foundation starts April, dating course starts this Monday. And I just want to, this isn't all about this, just to tell you that the prices will be going up after this round of courses, because I have been reflecting on the value that I offer in this 3-month program, doing some market research, and the small intimate group with the group coaching calls, the prices of those courses will be increasing by a few £100s going forwards. So if you'd like to benefit from this great value intimate course at this price, then do get in touch, and I'll put some ways to do that in the chat in a moment. So this is just a few comments from women who've taken the courses. I feel like a different person, and I'm not exaggerating. I feel more confident and hopeful, and the course is exceptional. So I'm just going to stop the share, and I'm going to come to questions. And before I do that, I'm going to put some links in the chat. And also these will be emailed to you, so don't worry about, let me see if that works. Oh yes, it did. So these will all be emailed to you as well. So there's a way to book a free discovery call with me, a 30-minute discovery call. And there's access to the courses. You can go on and you can explore, and you can do some free previews. So take a look. Thank you for your patience while I went through that. So I'm going to look at your questions. I'm going to continue with the video on for as I go through these questions, and then I'm going to turn our video off, and I'm going to invite you, our recording off, sorry, and I'm going to invite you to come and say hello. Okay, great question here. I'm very confused about self-love. I get the self-care aspects, but how can I feed love to my inner child? So it's not easy, because I know this from experience. I've been working with this for many years, but it is possible. So there is an answer there. Start with giving your inner child love and understanding. So there are many things we can do. It's about becoming familiar with her. What if you were to think about your child, you as a child, what needs did she have that weren't met? What did she need to hear? What did she need to know? And how did she feel at certain points in her life? Did she feel terrified and scared? Did she need to hear validation? Did she need to know she was safe? Did she need to know she was loved? She was beautiful? What did she need to know and hear? So if we can get in touch with that, and there's an exercise we do on my foundations course that will help you to get in touch with this. If we can answer those questions and speak to her, then we know how to give her what she needs. And we can give her what she needs by talking to her. And this isn't easy, it is a struggle. But I can do it, and I have struggled with this. So we can speak to her, we can write to her. And again, there's a writing exercise that I share on my courses. And it takes a lot of courage. So there's a writing exercise that we do, and I avoid it all the time because it makes me cry, but the tears are necessary. I need to feel it in order to heal it. That's where the transformation happens. So when I have the courage, I sit down and do this writing exercise, and I communicate with my inner child, and I tell her what she needed to hear. And it always makes me cry, and it always transforms me. So also the urge to become date worthy before I start dating. I hear that and I feel a lot of I feel a lot of compassion. So there's the compassion around that, perhaps that we don't have the self-esteem, perhaps that we don't feel good in ourselves. So it is about self-acceptance. It's not about waiting until we're perfect, we're the perfect size or shape, or we look perfect. But also there are little steps we can take. So it's not about changing ourselves, but it's about giving ourselves the best chance. So, I was chatting to a friend the other day who hasn't, she hasn't bought herself any new clothes in ages, and she's thinking about dating. If you were to be asked out on a really special date tomorrow, do you know what you would wear? Do you have something to wear? Do you know how you would do your hair? Those sort of things. And that might sound superficial, but it feeds into our self-esteem. It feeds into our self-esteem. So are you treating yourself with love, kindness, compassion? Are you treating your body as worthy? And your mind and your emotions as worthy? Thank you for sharing. Someone's sharing about the course, the Foundations course, found it helpful. Shoots of greater self-esteem coming. Fantastic. And oh, that's lovely. Sharing here that's completed the program, How to Fall in Love, and changed my relationship with myself. Already changed a number of unhealthy habits, and now joining the dating course. That's wonderful. Thank you. Writing to inner child, very useful, and listening to her and answering questions. So thank you so much. If anyone has a burning question, please stay on. I'm going to wrap up the recording. If you're watching this on recording, you'll receive, or live, you will receive an email with the details of the courses and the offers, which are available until the end of Sunday this week. And that's Sunday, the 28th of March, 2021. But if you're watching this after that date, go to katherinebaldwin.com and you'll find all the information. And I just want to plug my retreat. I know many of us haven't been abroad for ages, but if all goes well, I'm going to Turkey in October with a small group of fantastic women. So if you'd like to join us on a wonderful love retreat with gentle yoga, swimming pool, beautiful scenery, amazing food, then take a look at my website, katherinebaldwin.com. So thank you for watching, and I'm going to stop the recording now. Bye. Stay on and we'll have a chat.